I'm always filming when it's your nap time. I annoyed him. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. My name is Pluto and I'm a lawyer based in Australia. And for today's video, I'm going to answer a question that I have received probably 100 times in the comment section of my last video alone, which is whether Johnny Depp can sue Elaine or Amber as Elaine's principal for the statements that Elaine has been making in the media over the past week. Joining me for today as co-host, as ever, is my sleeping ragdoll, Leo. It's not a coincidence that he's always sleeping in his favorite spot when I film. It's all designed this way because he can be rowdy, and so I film when he's sleeping. You get to see an adorable cat sleeping, and I get to film in peace. It's a win-win scenario. All right, so to answer the question. Now, the first thing we have to look at is whether Elaine has actually made defamatory statements. By now, I would hope that all of you would know what the definition of defamation is. And I have watched the interviews that she's been giving. Interestingly, she's canceled her latest interview with Court TV mere minutes before it was due. The reporter was actually waiting for her with her clipboard and a list of questions right outside the courthouse, but Elaine canceled due to some emergency in court, and I don't know what it is. People are speculating that she's in trouble with Judge Ascarate for speaking, and some others speculate that she received the cease and desist letter. But again, at this point, we don't know. All we know is that she's clearly been doing Amber's bidding, and like I said in my last video, if you think Amber Heard was going to stop after this verdict, then you clearly have no experience with her personality type. These people never stop. I mean, she had to release a statement attacking Johnny for the TikTok thank you message that he posted. And then lo and behold, she had to speak out. She had to say, oh, a step forward for you, but a step backwards for women's rights. I didn't know that women's rights involved falsely accusing men of heinous acts. Correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, and if it's time for me to update the definition of women's rights and feminism. Which brings me to Elaine's comments of, this is a step backwards for women. Now, that's an opinion. I don't believe she can be sued for saying that. It's her opinion that Johnny's victory, which I think is a victory for all abuse survivors out there, regardless of your gender. But if she thinks, I mean, we all know it's what Amber thinks. If Elaine thinks that it's a step backwards, then it's her opinion. I don't think it's an actionable statement. With regards to the statement of Amber winning the UK trial, Amber Heard was not the defendant. Please watch my previous video on the topic. It's the one right before this one. That's false, but the gist of it, that 12 out of the 14 incidents were found to be substantially true, and that NGN were correct in labeling Johnny in the way that they wanted in the Sun. And I don't want to repeat what they said. I don't want to perpetuate it. But the gist of what happened in the UK is true. The only falsehood is that Amber won because Amber was a witness, not the defendant. Can he sue her for that? I mean, by the way, this is all theoretical because I genuinely don't think Johnny is that kind of a person. Unless things really got out of hand as they did with Amber Heard. Let's not forget that this woman, Amber, has spent years defaming the man, and he really only took action when it got to be too much. It's also worth noting that this isn't the first time that Amber's lawyers have been pretty much spouting nonsense to the media about Johnny Depp. Back in 2020, I remember in the early days of when I started covering Johnny's cases, a lawyer by the name of Roberta Kaplan worked for Amber. She's since quit or was fired, I don't know, but basically that relationship was terminated. But back in 2020, Roberta Kaplan was telling the media that Johnny Depp is indeed a perpetrator rather than a victim. She used much stronger language, but again, I don't want to perpetuate these labels in association with Johnny, especially now that he's been victorious in court. Did Johnny sue Roberta Kaplan or Amber Heard as Roberta Kaplan's principal? No. I've been covering both his cases for so long that you get a feel for what kind of a litigant Johnny is. And he's definitely not vindictive, which is in stark contrast to Amber Heard, who really seems like the kind of person who would sue left, right, and center if she didn't like what she was hearing. Elaine also said that evidence was suppressed and that this evidence was allowed in the UK, and that if it was allowed in this case, then the jury would have found for Amber. I wouldn't call it suppressed evidence. I would call it inadmissible evidence for many reasons, such as hearsay. Elaine did something really dirty and deliberately told the media about a specific text message that Johnny's assistant Stephen Deuters had sent to Amber back in 2014 after the Boston flight, apologizing to her. Now, this was rendered as inadmissible during the trial because Stephen wasn't a witness. He wasn't even deposed. And so therefore it was hearsay. In the UK, Stephen was indeed a witness, and it was introduced, as Elaine said. But what she's not telling you is the reason why it was inadmissible this time. She never specified that it would be hearsay. Stephen wasn't a witness. And what really disappoints me is when seasoned lawyers like Elaine sit there with a straight face and make a mockery of the law, and also, in a way, insulted the court. Judge Ascarate was very much instrumental in deciding what evidence was admissible and what was not. So it sounds like Elaine's accusing Judge Ascarate of some kind of bias or corruption, suppressing evidence on purpose. It's not just up to Johnny's team to say, "No, Your Honor, we think this is inadmissible." And then the judge doesn't just go, "Okay." The judge makes her own mind up. She hears out both sides and then renders her own decision. I mean, Elaine pretty much accused the jury of getting on social media, committing contempt of court for not following the court's instructions, but that's not the question I'm answering here. However, I will briefly say that I don't think the jury will be suing her. They haven't been identified. They won't be identified for at least another year. And the statute of limitations for defamation is a year. But that's a different topic. So a few of Elaine's statements are questionable. Are they full-on defamatory? Now, she is a lawyer, even though I think within the past 6 weeks, she's demonstrated that maybe she's not top-notch. Not that I'm top-notch. I have to respect people who are significantly older than I am. I'm in my 20s. I'm very inexperienced in the grand scheme of things. So I don't even feel comfortable criticizing a lawyer who is so much more experienced, who's been working since before I was born, really. But I think I can weigh in on her behavior on camera during these interviews that she's been giving. She's deliberately misleading the public. She knows that the public watches the mainstream media. Unfortunately, it's still a thing, even though social media is overtaking it. But she's trying to perpetuate Amber's narrative, which brings me to the question of, if Johnny wanted to sue, which I don't think he would at this point, with what she said at this point, I don't think it's enough to push Johnny into that territory because he just wants to live and let live. He wants to move on. It's clear Amber doesn't want to move on. I mean, look at that statement after Johnny's TikTok post. Come on. Having said that, if he were to do it, let's say Elaine makes a very inflammatory statement in the future. Can he go after Amber as Elaine's principal? Absolutely. I mean, Amber was successful on one of her counterclaims for that very reason, even in the complete absence of any evidence that supports the fact that Johnny instructed Adam to make these statements. So speaking to the press isn't within a lawyer's scope of employment. And when an agent acts outside the scope of their employment, usually the principal wouldn't be held liable, either directly or vicariously. But seeing as Amber was successful, then it's only fair to argue that Johnny could indeed sue Elaine for speaking to the press on behalf of Amber Heard, because she is perpetuating her client's narrative. So if Elaine doesn't keep quiet and if she keeps towing the line, Amber might actually find herself as a defendant once again. Speaking of which, I did also want to briefly touch on the Washington Post and their decision to keep the op-ed up. They have added an update, like a little editor's note or disclaimer, which I'll put up on the screen for you right now, and I will read out as well. This was added on the 2nd of June of 2022, a day after the verdict was rendered. In 2019, Johnny Depp sued Amber Heard for defamation arising out of this 2018 op-ed. On June 1st, 2022, Following a trial in Fairfax County, Virginia Circuit Court, a jury found Heard liable on 3 counts of the following statements, which Depp claimed were false and defamatory. They then go on to list the 3 statements, which I will not be reading out, but they also thought it was worthy to add this. The jury separately found that Depp, through his lawyer Adam Waldman, defamed Heard in 1 of 3 counts in her countersuit. I mean, if that doesn't show you that the Washington Post is being a vindictive, petty little bee,
my dog stepped on a bee,
then I don't know what does. In fact, the Washington Post, if they had any dignity or self-respect whatsoever, would have taken the op-ed down. The fact that they've kept it up, put up that editor's note, and then also decided to remind the readers that, hey, Johnny was liable too, just shows you that, very much like Amber Heard, they're defiant until the end. Any respectable publication would have taken it down. Plain and simple. Now, there is a remedy that many defamation plaintiffs seek in addition to damages, which is an injunction. An injunction is basically a court order that makes a party either do something or refrain from doing it. Now, the Washington Post was not a party to this lawsuit, which he could have sued them, by the way. He could have added them on as co-defendants. Since they're not a party to the lawsuit, they weren't subject to the consequences of the verdict. And so the Washington Post is currently free to keep that op-ed up unless Johnny applies for an injunction against the Washington Post. I don't know if he's going to do that. It's just an available remedy. So in summary, so far, I think Elaine has been just towing the line. Although it's interesting that she suddenly had to pull out of an interview last minute. I do wonder whether there have been consequences already that we don't know about. But at this rate, if she keeps going, it is open to Johnny to do something about it. But if you remember what I said in my last video, I think Johnny's happy at this point. I think the truth is out there for him. That's all he cares about. Litigation is stressful, and I'm hoping that the media hype around the case will die out and Elaine will basically disappear and we just won't have to hear from her ever again. And hopefully the same applies to Amber. I heard she's gonna write a book, so who knows what she's gonna say in it. Amber really needs to be careful at this point. I don't think she understands what happened. I don't think she understands the seriousness of all this and what it means. Of course, there's still the appeal, which Elaine has said that Amber will most definitely be pursuing. I will have to look into that further for a video on that topic as well. But yeah, I hope this answers your questions. I'm so curious to know why Elaine pulled out and what that court emergency was. It could have been completely unrelated to this, by the way, but the timing was definitely interesting. I'll just say that Elaine's not doing her client any favors because for someone who just wants to be left alone, presumably they wouldn't be happy with their lawyer giving interviews and perpetuating this narrative that should have ended on the day of the verdict. That's it for this video. I hope you found it informative and helpful. I'm very busy the next couple of days with my real job, and so I probably won't get around to making another video until the weekend. So I'll see you then. Thank you so much. Take care. Until next time.